Hello, I'm Oliver Pickard and welcome to beautiful Limousine France. Today we are continuing work on Pandora, my lovely little Cox GTM. And today we are going to be doing the inner sills. Now these are sills, if you don't know what sills are, and they look okay except for the fact that these have been coated in some sort of weird resin, probably fiberglass resin, but the underneath of them is completely rotted out. It's, well, you can actually peel parts of the car off, which is never a good thing. So obviously we need new sills. The other side's been crashed into and is far from the original shape that it was, and this one's got tin worm. So we need new sills. We're going to do the inner sill first. Now, the reason why the sills are so important is because the sills are one of the main strengthening components of the chassis. They hold all of the strength. The centre tunnel that we did in last week's video, which if you haven't watched that, you can either go watch that and then come back, or just wait till the end. It's not really canonical. There'll be a link at the end of this video. But, or check out the playlist. There's also a Pandora playlist now. So all of the videos to do with this car are in that playlist. But anyway, the structure. Most of the structure in the floor pan of the car is either in the centre tunnel or in these sills, so they're absolutely vital. So the fact that we've got one that's caved in and one that's rusty is no good. And what we're going to do, we're going to build the car as a kit of parts. So we're going to make all of our bodies, well, our floor pan sections, and then when we make the roll cage, we're actually going to build all of the chassis together. But in order to do that, we need all of our parts. So we're going to do the inner sills first. Now, the inner sills in a Cox GTM, I'm going to jump in, so you have to, come on, Rich. The inner sills on a Cox GTM aren't really anything special. They're just a sheet of 1mm steel that joins the stiffer outer shell of the sill to itself. And that's no good, because Pandora's mission is to become the best Cox GTM in the world. So I have to make absolutely every component that I make better than it came from factory. If I touch it, it's got to get better. And so we're going to be changing things just slightly. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be making the sill slightly bigger. Not bigger this way, but bigger this way. We're going to be making it deeper. Because currently, the floor hangs down slightly lower than the sill. The sill ends and then the floor carries on a little bit. And that's because the seat in the original car is on a jaunty angle. I don't like that. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking we're going to be taking the sill lower down to meet the floor, and then we're going to be taking it about 15mm lower than that. About to where, I don't know if you can see this, but about to where this wood ends on this pallet. And the reason for that is that because I'm 6'6", I need headroom. And as you can see, by the time I get a seat in here, I'm not going to have any headroom. So I need to lower the floor slightly, and then that way I can have a bit more headroom. Because I don't want to make this car not a Cox GTM, but I have to massage things in just a way that I get the room that I need. Where does the inner sills come into that? Well, obviously, this piece of metal isn't any good. It's all bent and buckled. But even if it was, it's not deep enough because it no longer meets that 15mm plus requirement. And it's not as stiff as it could be. So, the way I'm going to make this stiffer and lighter is I'm going to drill big holes in it. And I'm going to use a process called dimple dyeing. And when you dimple dye something, you use a dimple dye tool which uses a positive and a negative part of the tool, and you put them on either side of the steel, sandwich it, and you tighten them up, and it bends the edge of the hole round, making it 100% stronger than it was. So this panel is going to become both stronger and 100% stiffer than it came from factory. The added bonus of that, as well as looking pretty, is that I'm going to be able to paint the inside of it, which any box section on a car that is a sealed box, obviously you can't paint the inside of, which is a problem, because then any sort of humidity that gets into that box when you make the box, so if you make it on a humid day, for example, gets trapped in that box, and then over the years, it'll rust out from the inside, because that's where panels mostly rust out from. So to prevent that, we're going to whack some big holes in it, and then we're going to use those holes to make it both lighter and stiffer and rust proof. And we're going to do it from the inside out. It'll be a cool design feature of the car. It's there is a famous prototype made by Bertone called the Bizarrini, is it the Bizarrini Manta? And he put dimple dies on the outside of the car. And there are many racing cars throughout the years that have had dimple dies in the sills as well. This isn't something that I'm inventing. Putting the dimple dies on the outside is a bit daft. That's why it was just a concept car. But it's a bit daft because that just obviously traps water. So I'm putting them on the inside. But the process and the methodology is exactly the same. So the first thing that we have to do today is make our dimple die tool. Because you can buy them, but why would you buy something that you can make for free? Come on, let's get started. If you buy a commercially made dimple die tool online or whatever, then it will usually be made out of aluminium or a hard machining plastic such as Deburring or nylon. But I'm going to be making my dimple die tool out of, regular viewers will already know what I'm going to say, a big block of oak. This is the end from a roof beam. And I've got loads of this stuff, so I'm going to use it. It's free to me, and that's why I'm using it. It's super hard, super strong, and it's wicked stuff. So that's what I'm using. And like I said, I've got tons of it, and it's because it's from one piece of wood, my positive piece and my negative piece will slot together beautifully, and the one piece won't be stronger than the other piece or anything like that. So if you're going to be making a dimple die tool, I advise you to make them out of one piece of wood and not two pieces of wood that might be from different trees or anything like that, or two different sorts of wood. Make sure they're both from the same piece of wood if you can. And you may have noticed that I use a lot of metal cutting tools to drill oak on this channel. Now, if you're going to be using metal cutting tools on wood or on machining plastics such as Deburring or nylon, you're going to have to do something to the tools. You're going to have to regrind them. Now, this is a drill bit, obviously, and this here is what's referred to as the cutting angle, this part of the helix. And what will happen if you drill just with a shop bolt drill bit into Deburring or nylon or wood, it will corkscrew in and it will pull itself in really quickly and make an absolute mess, and it will usually split the wood and will damage the plastic. And so you don't want a chewed up mess. What you have to do is you have to lessen this angle here, because usually this angle matches this one. So we've reground this cutting edge just here so it's perfectly flat rather than following the helix, because normally the cutting edge follows this helix. Instead, it's been ground to be completely flat. This slows down the cutting speed of your bit, and it's essential for perspex, polycarbonate, any sort of wood or plastic or nylon, Deburring, all that kind of stuff. You want to slow down that cutting speed. So if you've been drilling stuff like polycarbonate and it's been cracking, now you know why. You need to regrind your drill bits with a bench grinder. So after some consideration, I've decided that by the time I turn this piece of oak down, it's just going to be too weedy of a dimple die. And I don't want weedy dimple dies, damn it. If I'm going to be doing them, I want big, chunky, sexy dimple dies. So, in order to get chunky, sexy dimple dies, I've been out into the garden and I've picked a chunky, sexy piece of wood. This, if you're a long-time viewer of the channel, is from the old cow feeding troughs that used to be in what is now will be my kitchen. My kitchen in Potentia. And this used to hold up the main beam of the house. So now it's going to be used to make the tool that will hold up the middle of my car. Or connect the front and the back together. But anyway, what I've got to do now is all the things I did to this, which is measure it up and cut it out and all that stuff. Thankfully, last week I also put in a vise, so I can chop it and all that without being on the floor. No more working on the floor, he says, cut to me in 10 minutes time on my hands and knees working on the floor. Let's get stuck in, shall we? This is the downside of using oak. Now, the reason why we've drilled a big hole in the middle is so that we can mount it on a piece of threaded bar, and that will in turn hold it in the lathe, so that we can chop the corners off, basically, and then we can start shaping, because we need a positive end and a negative end so that they fit together. And then we can do dimple die things. Now we've made our dimple die tool. It's very simple, but it's actually quite hard to make because it's the mirror image of itself and it fits in perfectly together. And it has a hole in the center. And the way it works is that you drill a big hole in a piece of steel and then you sandwich it. You sandwich your steel with your tool, like that. And then you put your bolt through and you tighten your bolt and it presses a dimple die. And this is my practice dimple die. This is one I made earlier, and this is incredibly thin stuff, much thinner than this steel. And this is the sill I've just cut out. And you'll notice that it's incredibly floppy. And sheet steel is very heavy. It's quite a weight is this, but it's very heavy and it's very floppy, which is not what you want for a car. You want stiff and light. But this tray here that is my practice dimple die is much thinner stuff than this is, but you'll notice it's much thicker, it's much stiffer already. And when I flex it, it doesn't flex on the dimple die. And the reason is the metal has been pushed out at the back, and so it's made it much, much stiffer. And if I put 6 holes in this piece of metal, if I did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 at 30-degree angles from each other, then this piece of metal would almost be strong enough for me to stand on. And it's incredibly thin and it's incredibly light, and because you've drilled massive holes in it, it's even lighter. So you'd be able to lighten this piece of steel by maybe 50% nearly, and increase its rigidity by over 100%, which is exactly what you want for a car. So that is exactly what we're going to do to this. We're not going to do them at 30-degree angles from each other because it's not wide enough, obviously. But we are going to do them in the centre all the way along, and it's going to make it much, much stiffer, and it's going to hold the front of our car to the back of our car, and it will no longer be really heavy because we're going to drill some really big holes in it, and it's going to no longer be really floppy like a wet noodle because it's going to be full of dimple dies. So added lightness. The hardest bit about doing this is you need to work out the length of your panel and the spacing between your dimple dies. And it's really important to make a practice dimple die, because the edge of your dimple die is going to be bigger than your hole, obviously. And so it's really important to do a practice piece to notice the outside diameter of your dimple, and then to use that then to work out your spacing, because you can't have your dimples running into each other, but you don't want them too far apart either. The closer you have them comfortably, the stronger your panel will be, the stiffer your panel will be, up to a point. But if your dimples start running into each other, or they get too close together, you'll actually start to curve the panel and bend the panel, which you obviously don't want. So you've got to be conservative, but you've got to work it out the best you can and get them as close together as you can at the same time. It's a delicate balance, but I think we've got it. Because this piece of sheet is so thin, I'm actually supporting it with a piece of wood underneath and a little helping hand assistant here. This is my glamorous assistant for the day. Okay, so this is wobble test pre-dimple dies, and it is floppy. I need to go around it with a round file, half moon file now, and get rid of all the burrs, because that's razor sharp. When you make something like this, the tendency is to wipe the swarf away with your hand like this. Never ever do that. Can you see this piece of swarf here that's hanging off the edge? That is razor sharp. It's like a Stanley knife blade. And I see it all the time in videos. I watched a video the other day with a really experienced guy who was doing metal work, and he was using a half round file like this on the edge of metal, and he wiped it across like this, wiped the swarf and the muck off. Never ever ever use a piece of kitchen roll. There's a reason why you'll see a lump in my pocket most of the time when I'm working, because I get a piece of kitchen roll on me to wipe it off. Because if you catch a piece of swarf on your hand, you can slit your palm straight across, and because it's a really clean cut, it will bleed like mad. So whatever you do, if you're going to wipe a piece of steel or a piece of stainless steel or a piece of aluminium, use a rag or a piece of a decent amount of kitchen roll. Not your bare hand, whatever you do, because they'll even cut through gloves. It's super sharp. It's also important, I often see dogs in workshops. If you have a dog or a cat, Napoleon is safely in the house, because you don't want your dog or your cat walking around on the floor like this when there's swarf around. I know it's cool to have your dog in your workshop and all that, and it's nice, but when you're doing work like this, you don't want them anywhere near, and make sure that you sweep and hoover your entire workshop, because you get one piece of swarf like that in a dog's paw and it's a really expensive vet's bill, because the entire paw needs sorting out. And yeah, don't do that to your dogs, people. This tool is called a nogger, and it does the exact same job as the half round file, but it's specifically designed for deburring holes. And it's basically a little blade that swivels, and you can put extra blades in the handle, but it's a super simple little tool that every single professional engineer in the world has. And it's really, really handy, but these blades don't last forever. So if you buy one, make sure it comes with extra blades, or order extra blades with it, because it's a really handy thing to have around the workshop. Before we start using our dimple dies, it's absolutely essential that you fully deburr the holes. You want no swarf and no rough edges inside your holes. The reason for that is that it can actually put your dimple die on a slight angle, and then you end up with perfect holes all the way along, and then one skew width hole. And the last thing you want is a skew width hole. The other thing that we've done is we've put a bit of paraffin wax from an old candle around the edge of our dimple die, and that is so that the dimple die doesn't get stuck in the metal, because the last thing you want is for your dimple die to get stuck in your piece of steel or a piece of aluminium or whatever you're using, and then not be able to get it out and have to hit it with a hammer in order to get it out and bend your piece of metal. So now we've done that, now we've done that, I can slot it all together, put a big nut and a washer on the back, like this. Put a big nut and washer on the back. Like that. Now you can see how it works. And as if by magic, there we go, our beautiful dimple dyed panel. We've just got a lot more to do now. And there we have it, a freshly dimple dyed inner sill. And it's super rigid. With the power of editing, I shall now show how super rigid it is. Look at that for the difference. Okay, it's got a little bit of wobble in it, but it's actually so strong that it can hold its own weight without bending, which is pretty incredible considering we've removed a substantial amount of material and actually made this panel both stronger and lighter. And if you want to strengthen a monocoque chassis at the same time as lightening it, this is the way to do it. Although it's not quite finished yet, because it's going to have some folded over edges in order to attach this panel to the other panels. But those folded over edges will also strengthen this panel on top of the dimple dies. So it will gain another 100% rigidity from what it originally was. So it's going to be super, super strong. I dare say it would be possible to walk across it once it's got its bends in. Although I'm not going to try it because it's pretty, and I don't want to make another one. Although I have to make another one for the other side. But anyway, panels like this are commonly used in aircraft since the 1920s, but also in racing cars and rally cars in order to tie a monocoque chassis to a roll cage. And I'm going to actually be incorporating this inner sill as part of the roll cage, but I'm not going to tell you how and why I'm going to do that until a future episode, so you've got that to look forward to. If you have any comments or questions other than that, please leave them down in the comment section below. I always read every single comment. And if you are interested in any of the tools I've used in this video, then I'll leave Amazon links down in the description. Now, full disclosure, Amazon do give me a little bit of money for you using the link, but it doesn't cost you any extra than it normally would to buy the product if you were searching for it yourself. So if you're looking for a product, and I've used it in the video, then make sure you use that link because it actually really supports the channel. It helps me make more videos for you, and it helps me build Pandora. So that's hugely helpful, and thank you. If you want to support this channel in any other way, the best ways are to like this video and also share it with your friends. If you have a friend who you think will be really interested in this video, the best way to help me to make free TV for you to enjoy is to share those videos with your friends, because the more videos that we get to the people who will enjoy them, the better. Thank you all for watching. Please be awesome to each other, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye bye.